Hello everyone and welcome back to our channel. If you're looking for an account with grit, heart, and a twist ending that no one saw coming, stay with me. Because Ryan Job's life is exactly that, a triumph that ended with a tragedy so sudden it left an entire nation reeling. Ryan's journey into the spotlight didn't happen right away. He wasn't a child celebrity or a star athlete drawing headlines at a young age. He seemed like the kid next door, friendly, respectful, enthusiastic about sports, driven by a sense of purpose he was still discovering. Yet from early on, there was a sign of the determination that would someday vault him beyond the realm of the ordinary. His hometown, nestled in Washington state, might not be as famous as the big coastal cities for forging future Navy SEALs, but it sure produced this one. And from childhood, he had an adventurous spirit, as if he was quietly preparing himself for the hardest tests life can throw at a person. His story might remind you of the kind of real-life adventure that big Hollywood studios try to dramatize. But what they can't fully capture is the genuine soul of a man who not only survived a catastrophic injury, but rose to the challenge of living fully afterward. Sometimes war stories can feel distant, like they happen only on a screen, far away from our comfortable daily routines. But Ryan's ordeal will draw you into his world, showing you what courage under fire truly looks like, and then reveal what true perseverance is when the heat of battle is replaced by the daily struggle to reclaim a normal life. To understand Ryan Job's place in the larger tapestry of recent American history, we need a brief look at the environment in which he came of age. Born in 1981, he was a product of the last stretch of the Cold War era, although he would come of age right at the turn of the millennium. Growing up in Washington state, he was surrounded by a culture that prized outdoor adventure. Mountains, lakes, forests. For kids like Ryan, that meant canoe trips, camping under the stars, maybe playing football or basketball at a local park after school. It was a region that invited physicality and endurance, and Ryan embraced it wholeheartedly. Though he wasn't raised in a big military family, the idea of serving others was not foreign to him. America was in a period of relative calm internationally during parts of his childhood, but by the time he was in his teens, the news headlines would start to shift. The 1990s saw conflicts abroad and humanitarian missions that reminded Americans their military was always on call. By the time the tragic events of September 11, 2001 occurred, Ryan was in his early 20s, already shaped by a sense of community and the internal drive to test his own limits. For many in his generation, September 11th was a galvanizing moment, a pivotal day that redefined career paths and life goals. The call to serve resounded across the country, and Ryan was among those who answered it. But even before that day, he displayed a quietly ambitious mindset. In high school, he was known for excelling academically and athletically. He wasn't the loud, in-your-face competitor you might expect of a future special operations warrior. Instead, he was described by friends as friendly, approachable, always ready to help someone in need. Yet beneath that approachable exterior lay a grit and discipline that might surprise you. When he decided to aim for the Navy SEALs, it wasn't a casual lark. These are the men who undergo some of the fiercest training in the world. Basic underwater demolition SEAL, Bud S training. A grueling crucible of mental and physical endurance that weeds out anyone but the most tenacious. Ryan recognized that to earn the right to wear the trident, he would have to transform himself. A talent for sports wasn't enough. Good grades and a love of outdoor adventure weren't going to cut it. He needed to push his body and mind far beyond what most consider possible. And so, day by day, he trained and built the mental toughness that would later save his life in a war zone. Even in the early days, it was clear that this quiet determination was shaping him into someone special. Navy SEAL training has been mythologized in books and films, but what you might not realize is how the training cultivates a mindset as much as it sculpts physical prowess. Trainees learn to adapt, to survive water confidence drills, to carry heavy logs up and down sandy beaches, to navigate close-quarter teamwork under conditions of unrelenting stress. They're taught to ignore the voice that tells them it's time to quit. Ryan embraced it all. He believed in the mission, and more importantly, he believed in the men alongside him. Eventually, he earned the right to join the ranks of America's most elite special operations community, a badge of honor that set him up for the hardest mission of his life. Once Ryan became a full-fledged Navy SEAL, his life took on an intensity that's difficult for civilians to fathom. The immediate post-9/11 years saw the U.S. military commit to large-scale operations in Afghanistan and Iraq. Ryan was assigned to SEAL Team 3, which was actively rotating into some of the most dangerous hotspots overseas. The media coverage at the time was awash with images and sound bites about the war on terror. People following along might have felt they had a good grasp of what was happening, but the truth, as many veterans will tell you, was infinitely more complicated and far more gut-wrenching than what made headlines. In 2006, Ryan's team found itself in Ramadi, one of the fiercest battlegrounds in the Iraq War. Ramadi sits in the heart of Anbar province, a region that was a stronghold for insurgent groups like Al-Qaeda in Iraq. It's one thing to hear the word Ramadi in a news segment. It's another to stand on its streets, wearing body armor, scanning rooftops and alleys, never sure if the next corner hides a sniper, an improvised explosive device, or a group of armed insurgents. Ryan was part of a close-knit group of SEAL snipers who provided overwatch for Marines and soldiers on the ground, a crucial role in urban warfare. The city's dense layout meant that high-caliber rifles, properly placed, could shift the momentum of a battle in a single moment. Those days in Ramadi were relentless. Danger lurked everywhere. Ryan's fellow SEAL Chris Kyle, later famous for the memoir American Sniper, described Ramadi as a nightmare environment where the lines between friend and foe were blurred by dust, fear, and chaos. In that environment, Ryan stood guard on rooftops, scanning the horizon through his scope, trying to differentiate between civilians going about their day and enemy fighters prepared to shoot at coalition forces. It was nerve-wracking, exhausting, and demanded absolute focus. And then came that fateful day, the day that would forever mark Ryan's life. During a mission in 2006, he was stationed on a rooftop in Ramadi, tasked with keeping an eye on the streets below. At some point, a sniper from the insurgent side zeroed in on Ryan, waiting for the moment to take a shot. The bullet, precise and lethal, tore through his face, shattering the orbital area around his eyes. It was the nightmare scenario for any soldier, but especially for a sniper who relies on vision more than almost any other sense in combat. His teammates rushed to treat him. They had to stabilize him, keep him alive, and get him out of harm's way. With insurgents likely aware they'd hit an American sniper, the situation was critically dangerous. Ryan's injuries were massive. The damage around his eyes was catastrophic. They evacuated him under fire, weaving through the rubble of Ramadi's streets, hoping the medical teams could save him. By all rights, Ryan should have died that day. Severe head wounds in a combat zone usually come with the worst possible outcomes. But his resilience, both mental and physical, defied logic. He survived. The cost, however, was his sight. In a blink, he was forced to enter a new reality, one where total darkness filled the spaces where visual images had once been. The bullet had effectively destroyed his eyes, leaving him blind for the rest of his life. What followed was a journey that tested the boundaries of hope, a journey every bit as daunting as what he'd faced in combat. His first challenge was simply surviving the medevac process and the intense surgeries. Military doctors did everything in their power to preserve not only his life, but also the structure of his face. The physical agony was staggering. Yet as soon as Ryan was stable enough to understand the gravity of his condition, he made a choice. He would not let blindness define him as a victim. Indeed, some of the hospital staff were stunned by the sheer optimism he displayed. He thanked them profusely for taking care of him, asked them about their lives, and joked that he was now going to become the best blind Navy SEAL they'd ever seen. He was serious about it. Recovery from such an injury is a marathon, not a sprint. For Ryan, it was months and months of facial reconstruction surgeries, intense physical therapy, and the exhausting process of learning to navigate the world without sight. The medical team worked meticulously to restore as much functionality to his face as possible, reconstructing bone and tissue, trying to preserve a sense of normality for him. But no one could replace his vision. That was gone forever. Ryan returned home to the States and found a new kind of battlefield awaiting him, a psychological and emotional one. The moment a severely wounded veteran arrives home can be strangely surreal. There's the relief of being back on U.S. soil, but also an overwhelming awareness of the changes in oneself and the challenges that lie ahead. For Ryan, it meant learning Braille, practicing daily living skills for the blind, and grappling with the knowledge that the profession he'd sacrificed so much to excel in, sniper, special operator, was now out of reach. Yet this is where his character truly shines. Instead of sinking into despair, Ryan sought out every adaptive program he could find. He discovered an inner reservoir of determination that propelled him to continue pushing himself physically and mentally. When he enrolled in college, he aimed for excellence. When he decided to climb Mount Rainier, the highest peak in Washington state, he dedicated himself to the training regimen, refusing to let a missing sense hamper his love for adventure. By all accounts, he attacked these goals with the same ferocity he had displayed in Bud S. Only now the obstacles were different, often invisible to anyone else. Think of the everyday tasks you take for granted: reading a textbook, walking down a crowded sidewalk, cooking a meal. All of these had to be relearned under new parameters, and Ryan tackled them one by one, day after day. Amid this period of rebirth, something heartwarming occurred. He fell in love. Yes, Ryan met and married the woman who would become his greatest supporter and partner in all his dreams. Their relationship was a testament to the fact that love doesn't need perfect conditions to flourish. She embraced not only Ryan, but also his new reality, encouraging him to go after his goals. They built a life that was surprisingly normal. There were jokes in the kitchen, quiet evenings together, shared ambitions about the future. Yet anyone on the outside could see that what Ryan was doing was extraordinary. He was proving that blindness need not sever you from your passions or your sense of purpose. His decision to climb Mount Rainier came from the same place of courage that had led him to the SEALs. Like many who tackle that iconic peak, Ryan viewed the climb as both a physical and symbolic challenge. Standing over 14,000 feet tall, Rainier is known for its unpredictable weather and demanding glacier routes. The climb was far from a casual hike, but Ryan trained diligently, guided by fellow climbers, learning how to navigate with ropes and specialized equipment. Step by step, he ascended that mountain, turning each step into a statement. My life isn't over. I might not see the path ahead, but I'm moving forward anyway. Upon summiting, Ryan had help feeling the surroundings. His friends described the vast expanse of clouds and valleys, and he took in the crisp, frigid air at the peak. When he descended, he arrived home with yet another achievement to his name and a clear message to veterans everywhere. Adversity is brutal, but it can be overcome with the right attitude, preparation, and support network. Word of Ryan's story began to spread in the veteran community and eventually across the country. People were amazed that a man who lost his sight to an enemy sniper was now pursuing adventurous goals and supporting others in their own recovery journeys. Media outlets picked up the story. He appeared on news segments and at motivational events. Military organizations invited him to speak, and he found himself serving in a new capacity. As a beacon of hope for the injured, the discouraged, or anyone who needed to be reminded of what the human spirit can accomplish. It would be easy to imagine a different ending to Ryan's life, one in which he continued to beat the odds for decades and eventually became a beloved elder statesman of the veteran community. Unfortunately, fate had other plans. In 2009, just 3 years after that sniper's bullet should have ended his life, Ryan Job returned to a hospital for another surgery. This one was more routine by comparison. He was undergoing a procedure to improve his facial reconstruction, an elective step, you might say, in his journey to restore as much of his original appearance as possible. By all accounts, the procedure itself wasn't exceptionally high risk. Ryan had faced far greater perils on battlefields and in his post-injury surgeries. He'd been through multiple reconstructive steps before, but this time a complication occurred. Whether it was a medical error, a random stroke of misfortune, or both remains debated. He fell into a coma and never recovered. The man who had survived a near-fatal sniper wound, months of recovery, and the rigors of climbing a treacherous mountain, died in a sterile hospital room from a surgery that should have been relatively safe. The shock resonated widely among those who knew his story. How could this happen? How could a bullet to the face not stop him, yet a post-operative issue take his life? News outlets covered it, and the veteran community mourned. Here was a warrior who had defied fate, only to be undone by something that seemed almost mundane in comparison. Many of his teammates, including Chris Kyle, publicly expressed their disbelief and sorrow. They honored him at a funeral with all the respect afforded to a fallen serviceman, because in their eyes, Ryan Job was as much a casualty of war as those who had died directly in combat. His injuries, after all, stemmed from his wartime service. If not for that sniper's bullet, he might never have been on that operating table in the first place. Some individuals in the medical and veteran advocacy fields also used Ryan's case to highlight the complexities of war-related injuries that might not fully manifest until much later. Repeated reconstructive surgeries can accumulate risk, and those long-term health complications can sometimes get overshadowed by the immediate life-saving measures. His tragic death opened up important conversations about continuity of care, the role of private healthcare facilities versus VA hospitals, and the support networks that should be in place for wounded warriors navigating a lifetime of medical procedures. In the aftermath of Ryan's passing, tributes poured in, each one testifying to the enormous impact he had made in just a few short years. Many recognized him from references in American Sniper, Chris Kyle's best-selling memoir, where Ryan's resilience was praised as an inspiration even among SEALs, men known for their toughness. Some who only knew him indirectly through interviews on mainstream networks like CNN or Fox News were taken aback at how deeply his story resonated. The intangible strength he exuded transcended the usual barriers. After all, how many of us can say we've stared down the ultimate adversity, losing the sense of sight, and decided to keep climbing, both literally and figuratively? His funeral was a solemn affair, both heartbreaking and uplifting. Military honors were bestowed upon him, and he was laid to rest with a sense of finality that felt, in many ways, incomplete. People who attended spoke of the emotional whiplash of eulogizing a man who had already undergone the kind of life and death trial that should have ended in a triumphant second act. The ceremony served as a poignant reminder that a veteran's battles don't necessarily end when they leave the combat zone, and that none of us are guaranteed tomorrow, no matter how fiercely we fight to survive today. In the months and years that followed, Ryan's name would pop up in discussions about the cost of war, the resilience of the wounded, and the unpredictability of life. Some of his fellow veterans continued the philanthropic and motivational efforts he'd begun, organizing charity climbs, speaking at events, raising awareness for adaptive sports programs. They often invoked Ryan's name as a guiding light, encouraging other wounded warriors not to give up, to push boundaries. Even those who never met him could relate to his story, the bullet that took his sight but not his spirit, the improbable summits he reached, the final heartbreak in that hospital room. Perhaps the greatest consequence of Ryan Job's story is the enduring inspiration he leaves behind. For countless veterans who returned home with visible or invisible wounds, Ryan exemplifies the possibility of a new chapter of life, one filled with achievement, love, and purpose. The talk show interviews he gave, the articles written about him, and the segment in Chris Kyle's book have all helped keep his memory alive. His story doesn't come with the typical Hollywood conclusion of the hero walking off into the sunset. Instead, it ends abruptly, leaving us to grapple with the unfairness of mortality. But maybe that, too, is part of why it resonates so powerfully. He reminds us that heroism isn't defined solely by what happens on the battlefield, nor is a warrior's courage limited to firefights and rescue missions. Sometimes the greatest acts of valor happen after the soldier returns home, in the daily slog of rehabilitation, the acceptance of permanent injury, and the quest to build a meaningful life against steep odds. Ryan did all those things and more. His achievements were not overshadowed by his ultimate passing. Instead, they stand as testaments to who he was and what he believed in. When we look at the bigger historical picture, Ryan's life symbolizes the broader experience of the post-9/11 veteran generation. Thousands of service members came back with profound injuries, both physical and emotional. Some overcame those challenges and flourished. Others succumbed to depression, addiction, or conditions that made it impossible for them to step into a normal life. Ryan's journey, thriving so spectacularly and then being lost to a medical complication, underscores the precarious nature of such recoveries. It reminds us that every victory in rehabilitation is precious, every breath is a triumph, and sometimes even the strongest among us can be taken by a single misstep in medical care. He also underscores the fact that public memory can be a fragile thing. While major news outlets covered his death, how many people truly remember his name a decade later? We tend to celebrate the heroism of the fallen in the moment, perhaps retweet a tribute or watch a news segment, but our collective attention can be fleeting. This is why it's crucial to revisit stories like Ryan's, to keep that candle lit for those who came before, for those who continue to fight their own battles, and for those who might take a lesson from his perseverance. To bring all these threads together, let's revisit Ryan Job, not as a figure of myth, but as a fully human being, flawed, courageous, loving, determined, and heartbreakingly mortal. He was an athletic kid from Washington who decided to join one of the most formidable military units in the world. He fought in some of the roughest corners of Iraq, took a sniper's bullet straight to the face, and lost his sight. He crawled back from that brink with an indomitable spirit, scaling mountains and conquering academic pursuits. He loved deeply, making sure that life after war would still hold joy, companionship, and adventure. In a final cruel twist, his mortal story ended in a hospital, where a complication from a surgery claimed his life. The bullet didn't do it, the war couldn't do it, but something seemingly so routine did, and that feels maddeningly unfair. Yet it's also a potent reminder that life doesn't promise us neat resolutions. The lessons Ryan leaves behind are all the more powerful because of that abrupt, tragic end. And that's all for today's video. If you like this video, hit that thumbs up, let us know your thoughts in the comments section, and subscribe so you won't miss out on future uploads. See you next time.